So nice to see you all out here on this beautiful day. You could be doing anything out there. Canoeing, swimming, scuba diving, anything like that. So glad that you're here, glad that we're dry, glad that we're here with Magda and Carmen Ermo and Katie Delmay to talk about this amazing show, amazing performance. How many of you were here for the performance last night? It was something else, wasn't it? A Mother's River of Tears. It made me think about two books, one by Dane Rudyard called Art as a Release of Power, and you could just feel the power swelling in that room, those performers, Magda herself, her breath, just extraordinary. The other one is called People Who Cry in Front of Paintings, and if you're not crying by the time you get out of Magda's show, go back in. Try again. But these are good tears. These are tears of empathy, tears of joy. Go back in. My name is Mark Scala. I'm the chief curator here at the Frist Art Museum. One of the three curators who worked with Magda on this show. It was really kind of cool. We usually split it up. But in this case, Michael Ewing, Katie Delmay, and I said, no, we all want to work with Magda. So, and that's something that happens with Magda. People want to do stuff with her. I mean, look at you. You're all here on a rainy day. Last night was packed. She's a people gatherer, and I think that we need to honor that. As is our custom at the Frist, I'd like to start by offering a land acknowledgement. The Frist Art Museum sits on land the Cherokee and Shawnee Native peoples, elders, and their ancestors call their homeland. We acknowledge and pay respect to them and offer deep gratitude and respect to the land and water that support us. Maria Magdalena Campos Pons, Behold, was organized by the Brooklyn Museum and the J. Paul Getty Museum, where the exhibition will conclude this spring. So we'll all have to head out to LA. We're grateful to welcome part of the original curatorial team, Carmen Ermo. Ta-da! Formerly of the Brooklyn Museum, where she co-organized the show, and now the Lorraine and Alan Bressler Curator of Contemporary Art at the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. So that's a really cool shift, so I hope you enjoy Boston. We've worked with them often, and we love Boston. We love Brooklyn. We love everybody. We also want to thank Maisie Harris, who's here with us today. Maisie? Waving her hand, okay, back there. Great. Associate Curator in the Getty Museum's Department of Photographs. And we acknowledge the contributions of Janae Daria Strand, who's now Assistant Curator for the Public Art Fund, not able to be with us today. So we're really happy to have Carmen Maria Magdalena Campos Pons, a.k.a. Magda, I don't know, it's just easier to say Magda, and Frist Senior Curator Katie Delmay speak about the exhibition, speak about we have a long history with Magda, actually. Nashville has a long history with Magda. The exhibition opens today and will run through January 5th of 2025. Before I turn it over to our speakers, I'd like to remind you to please silence your phones. Yep. Silence your phones and look around you for the nearest emergency exit while I thank our supporters. Our platinum sponsor support comes from HCA Healthcare, TriStar Health. Education and community engagement support comes from Nissan Foundation and the Wingate Foundation. Program and Spanish translation sponsor has been the Center for Latin American, Caribbean, and Latinx Studies at Vanderbilt University, with additional support from the Union Station, Nashville Yards, and Grand Hyatt, Nashville. For both exhibitions, we're grateful for the continuing operating support from the Frist Foundation, Metro Arts, Tennessee Arts Commission, and the National Endowment for the Arts. I would list all the lenders to the show. We do have some local lenders that we do want to thank for enabling us to really fill our galleries in a great way, but there are just too many to list. So thank you to the lenders. So now please join me in welcoming Magda, Carmen, and Katie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Wow, yes. We're all settled. Excellent. So I'm Carmen. Thank you, Mark, for the fabulous introduction, Nashville for the extremely warm welcome, the entire team at the Frist for knocking it out of the park with a truly magnificent installation, greatly expanded, of this very special show, Behold. So we're going to have a conversation really centering Magda, but Katie, who obviously had a huge role in making it look and feel as beautiful as it does here. I want to start actually with Katie, if you don't mind, Magda, and talk about what this moment represents here in your new hometown of Nashville, right? So Katie, if you could ground us in the path that led us to celebrating Behold here at the Frist today.
Happy to. But first, I do just want to quickly thank you, Carmen, and thank you, Maisie, for trusting us with your beautiful show, for letting us really shape it here to reflect our hometown hero as best we could. So the story really begins for us in 2011 when we presented a small, but I like to think mighty, exhibition in our Gordon Contemporary Artist Project Gallery space called Maria Magdalena, Campos, Pons, Journeys. And actually, the impetus for that show was Lisa Freeman's exhibition, and I think she's in the audience today. She did a show at the Indianapolis Museum of Art in 2007, I believe it was, and a now retired art history professor at Vanderbilt went up to see it, was blown away, and brought the catalog back to our curatorial team and said, I think we should really do a show with this artist. Well, we agreed. The work was fantastic. So we were delighted that Magda accepted our invitation to do a show a few years later. Now, at the time, I had hoped to have more gallery spaces, but the Cap galleries were all that was available. So I was really thrilled when I learned that our colleagues just down the street at the Vanderbilt Art Gallery were also going to present an exhibition of Magda's work, kind of in association with our show, and further, that they were offering her an artist residency. So that just seemed like a very, a bigger and better way to have Magda here in Nashville. And I think that was a positive experience, Magda. You spoke often about the connections you saw between Nashville and Matanzas, that Matanzas is the Athens of Cuba, and we're, of course, the Athens of the South. Your family came, and it was a wonderful experience for all of us. We all kept in touch. And then I think I'm still pinching myself that Vanderbilt was able to kind of lure you away from Boston and to have you join their very illustrious faculty as an endowed professor. And from that moment, I think the relationships with Magda have only gone deeper and stronger. And she's given so much to our community beyond the campus. So when we heard that the Brooklyn Museum and the Getty Museum were doing a major survey of her work, we immediately tried to get ourselves in there. And when you and Maisie were here for a studio visit, I think in 2021, we said, let us show you our beautiful galleries. Let us throw a dinner party for you. What can we do to be a part of this tour? And so now it feels so right, so good, 13 years later, to have Magda presented in this incredible exhibition in our largest exhibition space, our Ingram Galleries, which is where she very much deserves to be. So that's a little bit of our origin story and why this show is so special to us.
It's so amazing. And some of these images from that 2011 show, you see that you were, featuring the multimedia, complex, layered installations, right? This is Sugar Bittersweet, which doesn't appear in Behold because it was traveling elsewhere in a great show on Caribbean art. But as you'll see, if you haven't seen Behold yet, installation is really expanded and celebrated as central to Magda's practice. And the survey is organized thematically, and so you get really a taste and an introduction to some of the undercurrents of your incredible work, right? Whether that's family or migration or place or global histories, family connections to global histories. But I want to stay on Nashville for a moment and we finally let you talk, Magda. And talk about, if you could, what are the elements and themes of your practice that really have been heightened since coming to Nashville? And what's new since you've been here, and what have you learned from this city?
Well, before I go straight to that, answer that question, I want to, first of all, acknowledge the privilege to being here and the privilege to be in the company of every single one of you, but also the privilege to be surrounded by the people that always are with me but are not visible. Before opening this exhibition here, I went to Matanzas. I went back to Matanzas just to pray in the side of the ocean and just to speak with a Jemaya, goddess of the water, and also to celebrate my mother 99th birthday, since she was still alive. And because she's always with me, I want to say thank you to her. And I want to say thank you to my father, later father, who born in November 13, 1913, 13 years, Magda, in this exhibition, in this line. And I trust numerology. I like what numbers tell you and what numbers indicate to you. I am a traveler of this small planet. And I feel as arriving in Tennessee, in Nashville, was part of that little journey already settled some way, somehow, to come here. So I have learned a lot. I have grow and expand my understanding of gratitude. I say it all the time. I sign anything that I send out with gratitude because that's how I feel. And coming here was a lot of conversation. Why Nashville? Why you live in the Northeast? I didn't know completely, but I know that was the best decision that I have done in a long, long time. So thank you, Nashville, for engaging me, to embrace me, to receive me, and make me feel that I am one of you airlink connection here in this geography and in this city. And I'm going to start, before I say thank you to everyone, name by name, just to say how in the last few months specifically, I decide or came to a conclusion that I don't want to be referred any longer, anymore as an immigrant from anybody, any place, because I refuse. Because I find that I am not an immigrant, that I am just one more individual of this small island, Earth, in this vast, unknown ocean that is the universe, with ages that we don't know where they end and where they started. And I am just, together with everyone else, just a manifestation of that sort of life, every one of us trying to make sense and a meaningful sense of our opportunity to be visible, to be able, to be engaged, and to be good in the brevity of this form of experience that we have, meanwhile living in this form, temporary, of course, in this air. So, and I wanted to start with this statement, in a way, an affirmation, and inviting everyone in this room to refuse to be called anything else, because and then may us don't feel disregard. And I am in a very particular assignment, radical love. I am in an assignment to trying to find out what is that and how to make it visible with my art. So, back to the question, my beautiful Carmen and Kathy. I walk in this beautiful garden at Vanderbilt, an arboretum, pristine cape, curated garden, like Harvard Arboretum, like any arboretum in any place with a lot of resources to maintain. And every day that walk is such a privilege. And as I was walking those gardens, those fields, I taken hundreds and hundreds of pictures. And I'm going to talk about this particular piece, the secret of the magnolia tree, starting to just, the tree talked to me. And all that I could think is knowing the complexities, the versatility, the richness, and the untold stories, but yet lived, of the South. How did I come to terms with this? How do I make a materiality that is meaningful to me, that is true to me, but that maybe could resonate to others and with others? So I just was thinking too, going to one place to another, the people that become my family in Nashville, the areas that I was invited. I needed to go from Midtown to Brentwood, to Franklin, to Belmead, the pastoral landscape of Tennessee. It reminded me a little bit of Bavaria when I had been in Europe. The pristine quietness, serenity. And then I couldn't take out of my mind the violence of the landscape of the South. Couldn't take that away. That is still there too. How to come to terms with this, the fact that I get emoted by the beauty of the landscape given to me day by day. I am most certain that I have more pictures of magnolia trees in the South. I need to compete with some photographers that are here too, that have been taking a lot of, I know that Jerry Agnew is here and many others, but I know that I have taken more pictures of the unraveling of the beauty of the magnolia tree, to the point that professors that have been in Vanderbilt for 30-something years come to my studio and tell me, what is that? And I say, that is a magnolia flower, in a moment in which people really pass by and don't see them. So back to this, I am trying to negotiate the beauty of the landscape, the magnificence of the landscape with the history and with the complication of that history. So that's what I call the piece. This particular series that is in progress is not yet finished. I have been lazy lately.
Wait.
And that is called The Secret of the Magnolia Tree. The wisdom of women. No, the wisdom of women. The women that care when they could hurt, but they choose care. I want to learn from that. The absolutely giving of self in the service of others. You clean, but you don't complain. Even if you clean the shit of others, you make it beautiful. There is a wonderful, wonderful line of there about compassion, giving, experience, and dare to engage in our humanity. That is something that I have, I learned, and I think that I'm getting, as I mature, and better understanding on myself. This is the only city in the world that I choose, and I felt obliged to meet a stranger every day. Because when I was coming here, some people were telling me, but why? You're going to encounter this. And when I decide to come, I say, I'm going to do something. I'm going to encounter somebody every day. I have made more friends in Nashville, Tennessee, than any other part of the world. I am friends with the Jehovah's Witness in the corner of my building on the way to Vanderbilt. I am friends with the people that are fixing the street. I am friends with the construction people. I am friends with many people. And then I give them my telephone number. Why I do that? Because, yes, I am aware of privacy. But what an amazing thing to meet a new human every day. in this journey. I am expecting nothing, just the opportunity of the change. And then I am surprised when I get a tiny little note, I met you in so and so. And I start laughing and say, a miracle. No. Or back to the garden, Holly, the garden keeper. I was in Zurich. And I get a phone call that I don't identify. Professor, I haven't seen you in many days. The garden keeper. Holly, I want to live that way. And I want to try to contaminate anyone that touched me into trying to live that way. That is becoming materiality of my making. Doesn't matter if it is a watercolor or a sculpture or a performance, is because I think that that's what art should be and could be. And maybe I'm getting too many questions that hasn't been asking me
You're
yet.
perfect.
But that is so. The very first piece that I did in Vanderbilt was to plant in a garden. 2011. It's called Imole Blue. Imole for earth in Yoruba language, blue. And I was thinking when I was working with the students at Vanderbilt, I have never looked to the map of the little village that I grew up, that nobody needs to know because it's so small and insignificant in the southern of Matanzas, Cuba. And then I say to the student, Google map, let's Google La Vega, Manguito, and see you find it. So they found that little piece of land in Google map. And what I did was to think about the blueprint of the architects for landscape architecture in connection with Google Map, Google Earth now, who was a military device in first place. It was not to find beautiful gardens, and then put it into a context to art. So I plant the map of Manguito with, I don't remember the number now, 3,000 something blue hyacinths. So in the spring, you get this little map that was the size of a dwell in Tennessee and is looking from the sky, bird view, the town of Manguito, Matanzas in Tennessee. And it was for me grounding myself in this place. And then when I come back, after they convinced me after many years, but again, good that I agree and came, I did a piece that is called Sleeping Like a Log. And it was an impromptu performance in which any time that a tree is cut or a tree come down, I cry a little bit, and I rescue the entire trunk, put it in the backyard of the art department, still there, and I sleep in the trunk with my performance class, and it was Vanderbilt right now is doing a beautiful program that is called Eco Grief, and what we did in that performance was exactly Eco Grief. I lie down in the trunk, and the student run with pancart, asking about our connection and our awareness about working and in nature, with nature, and making us aware how privileged we are of being earthlings. So I think that answered the question. And before I go to the next question, I want to say, in the audience is EADJ curator Grace Anessa Ali, and I want to say thank you for the work you're doing with us. In the audience is Lisa Freeman, who worked with me from 1991 at Boston. In the audience is Adam Shinsky from Documenta Zurich, etc. In the audience are my colleagues from my department. In the audience is Michael. So, could I keep going? Arani, etc. My team that performed with me yesterday, they have been performing for many, many years. I am so grateful and indebted for every one of you. In the audience is my partner, Kamal Malak. I am so, so grateful. In the audience is Lejeune, the younger artist exhibiting with me. Thank you for being here and for saying yes when a call from my corner comes.
Amazing. Thank you for laying so much groundwork for us. I wish I had a picture of Imole Blue, but if you're local here, take a stroll in the gardens come springtime and check it out because it is glorious. We're going to get to La Vega and some of the installations in a moment, but before we leave this magical Secrets of the Magnolia Tree work, that's towering, imposing, gorgeous, layered, it's in a beautiful installation here. Again, I can't say enough how Katie and Mark and Michael really transformed, expanded, elevated Behold here. And one of the ways they did that is this primary gallery where you actually have, going back for a second, you have all decades of her work represented in one place. You have moments that represent Vanderbilt, that represent Cuba, that represent the seeing that is at the heart of this whole project of Behold. And I love that one of the first words on the wall is Estervina, your mother's name, in the incredible piece Umbilical Cord that shows this matrilineal power, the transference of knowledge, which we'll get to. But maybe for those of us who aren't artists, could you briefly blow our minds and tell us, what are we seeing here in terms of how did you make this giant triptych and what mediums, how? Thank you.
That's such a good question. So the piece is now in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art, which we are so lucky and happy. I sleep on top of the piece. I roll in top of it. I walk in it. I live in it. So the piece is a combination of watercolor, gouache, ink, photographic transfers, exon transfer, all of them in archival arch paper. This is the same paper. I always said that was used from a very, very ancient time. It's a French paper that has been very valuable and beautiful, has a lot of materiality on it. But I am interested in the, I am posing here many questions as a maker. A conversation with painting in which I challenge the narrative of painting. The more valuable painting is oil painting. The scale of the painting, the narration through the materiality of painting. We are beyond women who paint. I have painted for many years. But, and also the conversation about this transgression of materials. No, and also even when we have, they have huge history. When we think in, let's say, Robert Rauschenberg in the 60s, Robert Rauschenberg did extraordinary experiment with printmaking and painting. Very important, very influential. These things are behind in my mind. I always has been in some way, I would say, a whimsical thinker. I have been not afraid to be myself, but I wanted to use another, it's a word in English that escaped my mind now, that when I start saying when I was young, people say, don't say that, you are not there, but you are not that, but I feel, yes, I am that.
Wait, is it corny?
Corny. Yes. I am very corny. I am a very corny woman who could sing. That's true.
Yes. No and yes.
But I also a conceptual thinker, and that a dialogue between corniness and conceptualism was not accepted, and it was denied to me. You cannot do that. One of the things that I agree with myself, and I tell my student, be yourself. When I say to you, you cannot do that, show me that you could do it. Because it passed your mind. So you have, as an aspiration, a possibility for it is there. Now the question is from your imaginary to your making. And as in science, and I'm going to be very quiet because there are some very important scientists here, so I don't going to tell anything there. But I always say that the proximity between science and art is just the result. That I could get away with murder in few scenes in that piece of paper that somebody else cannot get away with that in other practical scenes. And this is what I talk when I teach drawing about the responsibility of the line. And what I say to my students, a line is very important, not just for me to make a clear line and divide the plane in two. Is that clear line too is in a scalpel of a surgeon with a different implications. Because I could erase my paper, but I don't want a surgeon that erase me.
after it's cut. No, so, but the two of them are lines, no? So there is some space for transgression, some space for adventure thinking, in which I want to locate myself, the same thing I always say to myself, for the despair of some of my colleagues, I am a minimal Baroque, and I say, you cannot do that. How could you be minimal and Baroque? I don't know, you're born in Cuba. And then you're going to try to deal with this two things too. So there is a lot of, so the interesting thing about the technology, let's say, as you guys know, I have worked a lot with Polaroid, instant photograph, all of that. Today, I could print photograph in many different papers. And I could print and work just adding material, which is happening here, or water-based material with a water-based ink. So these all materials that they fuse. You know, painting is alchemy, like anything else. That is, you know, photography is alchemy, sculpture is, ceramic is alchemy, you know, all those things. So painting is that too. I am very, I am very bodily with my paintings. I do all this entire piece is made in the ground floor because it's too tall, so I have this horizontal thing. And what I mean that I rest in top of the paintings, I do. Knowing too, of course, there is a point that I need to be careful. You know, gouache have a density different than that watercolor. But remember, watercolor is, the chemistry of watercolor is the water enter the paper and become material. It weave through it. Ink weave through the paper. And then gouache add a tiny little crispy, you know, you toast the surface like when you toast your bread, a little bit more. No, that. And I am very conscious about all those layers, or those things. Those pieces are, this particular piece is a meditation in the making of the brush stroke. If you could stand in front of that piece and you look at the hair, they are hundreds of hours of just hair making. No, with a 000 000 brush, one strand of hair at the time. Who cares about that? I do. Meanwhile, I do that piece, I am doing a performance piece that is private between me and that piece. But I'm going to tell you something. In 2001, I was at Pinacoteca Brera, and I want to be sure that it's in that one. The other one is Pinacoteca Ambrosiana in Milan. And I am installing my work in a gallery in other part of Milan. And my little son at that time, Arcadio, called me and said, Mom, you need to come to see this. It was to go to see the drawing of Raphael, School of Athens. And Mark was talking about people that cry in front of paintings. I have cried a lot in front of paintings. Sometimes I cannot stop crying. I have like a hiccups and sing and whatever. But when I went to see Raphael, School of Athens, and I could see the density of him holding the pencil in the paper, I knew that I wanted to do one day. It took me how many years? 20 years to do this piece after I saw this other piece. But I knew that I wanted to do work on paper that were meaningful to the God feeling of the making, because it is meaningful for the God feeling of the behold. I was the behold for Raphael. And that was important. I could talk about so many other scenes, but I don't know. I drew what I saw in my little notebooks in the spot there. I made notes, but it was something that was the living in the work, the making the work, your own skin in some different ways come to me. That's the way that I have done these pieces. They are no use paintings. they are performative rituals, they are prayers, profound prayers. I saw an owl when I was, I don't know, 8 years old or something, clapping my window. And that image never abandoned me. So this is what owl has been always, and any place that I go, I hear and see owls as it would be. But because both owl and me, we are in the nature. we are traveling together. So this is what this piece is. It's something too about the scale. I want to have the viewer at the knee of somebody. In the history of painting, this is not very gracious. You don't put people, the horizon line is not to see knees, it was to see eyes, it was to see faces, it was to see, and I kind of, not there for there, it was like, what about if? No, now since this woman stand, what size is this figure? What is story tell? What kind of relation to a spatial condition create for a viewer in front of a painting? All those scenes are important for the making of, in this tradition, and I am trying to bring it to this space that I call performativity of viewing, being. This is very interesting. There are many pieces in the show that I haven't seen in many, many years. So they become, for me, when I was in the show, I didn't install the show. The museum was missing. They just invite me to see it, and I enter some piece and I say, oh my God, I forgot the scale. No, because, but also, they haven't asked me the question yet, but I'm going to answer my own question. In a way, of my own reflection, that was, when I walk the show here, they are scenes that happen here that hasn't happened in any other the other scenes. No, should I stop and let you guys make me question, because you know that I could talk forever?
Yeah, why don't you take a breath? Take a breath, and I'll ask a question that you're about to answer, because you're on point. I mean, like many of the works in the show, you'll see, like in this work, you're going to see photographs with paintings inside of them, paintings with photographs inside them and around them, sculptures, performances that happen in installations, that happen in photography, that happen in painting. So just that mixing and the refusal to abide by the laws of art is just so refreshing and inspiring. But one of the most amazing and special things about this presentation at the Frist is the incredibly rare opportunity to explore your historic trilogy of installations titled A History of a People Who Were Not Heroes. And it's in its entirety, it's in its order, and it's happening for the first time since Lisa Freeman's great 2007 show, Everything is Separated by Water. And so in Frist, you get to walk through, pace by pace, this almost decade span of work, and the correspondence of memories that flow from each of these sites and conversations. You were no longer in Cuba, but you were making work very much about Cuba that is also about the world. So I'm wondering, I have images of each installation in order. And if you wanted to walk us through, illuminate these places, the stories, the lands that the trilogy represents.
Well, that is such a good question and an important body of work. I started a history of people who were no heroes growing up in a slave barrack in early 90s. I think that I finished that piece, the very first one, a town portrait, 1993 when I was at Harvard. And the entire idea of the piece was, remember, this is the 90s. It's all this big conversation about body politics, history, multiculturalism, all of that. And I was thinking about geography, and I have finished before these other pieces that were called trad, and Seven Powers. And I wanted to tell a story about, I wanted to do a sculpture that was different. That's what I want to say. I knew that I wanted to do a piece that was a sculptural piece, an installation, a sculptural installation, but I had my own push and pull with a sculpture. So I couldn't go to Cuba, because when you leave Cuba to come to the United States, in the condition of the time, you are not allowed to re-enter. You are
in exile. And I started conversation with the women in my family to tell me how they remember this town that we all have left long ago. So this piece become, in my mind, a very conceptual conception of a sculpture. I am thinking about having a conversation, and many years later visiting Joseph Kosu in his studio and thinking about language and sculpture. So I build the forms upon what they described to me the forms were. So do you remember the tower? And my mother said, yes, I remember the tower. The tower was a big structure with brick, blah, 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 blah. And then I asked my sister, do you remember the fountain that we used to go to play? So you come back to the previous slide. And it's that littered semicircular structure in the center, which have the color of the materials that were in the town. And I wanted to write in the materiality of building the form. So I went to a lot of experiment to find a way that the writing in the clay almost looked like graphite. And creating these four elements: the tower, the fountain, the wall, and the door. The door that you're going to see in the exhibition is that I am stealing a little bit, always stealing a little bit from my heroes. And when I came to study for the very first time here in the United States, Mass College of Art, my first visit was to Philadelphia Museum of Art to see Marcel Duchamp collection, the Arenberg collection, because since I was in Cuba, I admired the ideas some of the ideas that he opened for thinking about art, and I was fascinated with that door, the big glass that break, he put it together, exists as a ruin of what the original piece was. And I know that my town was all ruins, So all those things come to me together. And the piece is almost a language turned into materiality of three-dimensional representation: the fountain, the tower, the door, and the wall. And then the video narrative that are in it, or the stories that happen in the town. That is, for me, was the portrait of the architecture of the town. But the second part, that is called Spoken Softly with Mama, was I wanted to talk about the intimacy of the family. Something that had been always in my mind, and now I call it the familiar murmur, like when the family is gossiping between them in different moments or something. In Spanish, we say murmullo. But murmullo, well, no gossip, it would be like murmur, like this soft conversation that is always there, and you get some and you miss something. And it was to celebrate the women in the family. So it was from the village to the domesticity of the house, of the interior of the house, and then the third part, which is meanwhile the girls were playing. And it's just young girls, unaware of all the situations surrounding their innocence, something, meanwhile, things happens that are important and with great implications around them. All of them stories that are very difficult, but narrated with joy in some way. So for meanwhile the girls were playing, I remember the Sunday dresses when we were, go to church when it was permitted, because sometimes was not permitted. I remember my baptism, which I participate, was like a high security event, because at that time church liturgy was forbidden. So the piece is that, trying to bring materiality so different, clays, ceramics, glass, textile, video, and sound. I own the beautiful sound of all those pieces to my collaboration with the father of my son, Neil Leonard, who did sound production for many of those pieces, and they are beautiful, and you will hear it because we collaborate for many years. So that piece was a trilogy that I wanted put it in some place at the time that happened, and it never had the opportunity because it requires so many physical space in museums and places like that. So, but I think that it's a very important narration of a Black diaspora family narrative, and also historical, also in some way archetypal ideas of where is location, where is place. And I'm going to come back there to geography, because when I was asked in the beginning of these scenes, my relation with Africa, I'd say straight, it was my backyard. I never saw of Africa as the continent. Africa was everything that happened in my backyard, with no discussion. The music, the food, the traditions, the people. I didn't need to go to any place. I learned later there was more than that, no? But it was something quite beautiful about ancestry and the carry on of tradition within self, and also something more about the resiliency and the permanency of the power of the narrative that came in those terrifying transatlantic journeys that took place at some point in the history of a Black bodies narrative, because this entire pieces is about that.
Thank you, Magda. And yeah, just to emphasize too, for Spoken Softly specifically, this array, this altar-like presentation of your, women relatives who are at the time of this making were no longer on this earth, but of course ever present. And just the delicacy and the intention that the Frist and Katie, Mark, Michael again took to install it in its fullest realization, right? So spend time with these incredible embroidered details. There's even a video where you can see you embroidering these words onto these very sheets. So it's incredibly special. Everybody in Brooklyn loved this piece, and I'm gonna tell them all to come to see the full trilogy, because there was just so much resonance. Meanwhile, the girls were playing, like you said, this piece. I feel like it just resonates with our moment, right? We all live, we have our to-do lists, we have our families, we have our personal tragedies, and there's so much history swirling around us, right? Even on my flight here, we're touching down and passing a city called Lebanon, Tennessee, and feeling like, wow, we're really all connected, right? As you have always said in your work, Everything is Separated by Water was the title of that show, but the second part of that title was Everything is Connected by Water, right? So there's separation and there's connection together. And I saw so many hands go up talking about who was here last night. Yay, incredible, historic, magical performance. And so if we could shift away from, the sculpture, the installation, if you could tell us how performance develops differently. Mark introduced A Mother's River of Tears that was debuted at Brooklyn Museum during the opening weekend of Behold There. So that's the image here on the right. And then on the left, excuse my iPhone shots, but it's very fresh activity. And I'm wondering if you could talk about what ideas are at stake in A Mother's River of Tears, and how the development of this work is different from your other works. And I will also just say we have 6 minutes left.
What is it?
I love the 6 minutes left.
Okay.
I love the sigh.
So I know. So I am interested, because I am very happy to see this. You have put 3 slides. One of a performance in 1990 at the ICA in Boston, that one, and because it's I don't look my work often to look what I did. I keep moving forward. This is Havana, Malecon, 2000 something.
2012,
and then
it says?
Guggenheim, 2015 something. So there is a lot of performance. I believe, I always have said that performance is a very natural scene to come in my practice. I still could remember and recite the first line of the first, no performance, but it was performance. When I was very young, like 11 years old, I was participating in a play in my elementary school, and I was Rosita. I was Rosita, la princesa Rosita. Como verán, no tengo los ojos azules ni mis cabellos son rubios. and then and then it described me as a white princess. But my teacher was so smart that she changed everything to say that I wasn't that princess. And then she put my eyes black, my hair black, my skin tone. So amazing, Carmen Lidia Escobar Menendez. And that was my introduction to performativity, along with the tradition of a Yoruba Santeria Regla de Ocha in Cuba, in which performance is a manifestation of the most beautiful way of being. So I started seeing that since I was very young. And the other thing that was my introduction to art was installation art. I say the first installation art that I saw was a corner piece, brilliant. There was an altar in the house of the Yalosha, friend of my grandmother. And that installation art was an entire, totally immersive experience. We, the kids, would be salivating before in this month of September, because September 24 is the day that we celebrate Obatala. And there is a big hand of ripe bananas. They had been put there like 3 weeks before. And the bananas are getting mature and smelling better and smelling better and smelling that you want to eat it, but you cannot eat it because they are high and it's only to be seen. And we, the kid, would come around and when is the banana day? It would be September 24. How amazing. How an amazing experience of sensorial anticipation. You know, at that age, knowing that if you wait, you're going to eat that banana and then eat food for the Orishas, which is an experience that doesn't repeat any other place. So I was introduced to that almost at birth, no? And those things, as I go to learning art in the context of academic and formal understanding and historically position it, I find ways for that. And that is what these pieces are. I have been honoring and celebrating ancestral knowledge from my first performance. My first processional performance was a rebellion against how women and gender are represented. So I built a very, very large phallic and vaginal form and marched through the entire part of the Union of Artists and Writers of Cuba, and in a kind of protest presentation, because it was all conversation about limitations to the women's body. I was a very open speaking about the woman's right to her body and the woman's right to represent and engage and live his own identity as sewing. So all of those things had been important, and that was 1986 when I was doing that piece. That followed by another piece in 1988 that gave me a little trouble. And then in 1988 later, Harding Erotic Garden on Some Notation About Hypocrisy, was my thesis at Mass College of Art, and then ended in the Riverside Studios in London, and kind of a journey through different things in the world. Performativity is the body, as I have seen, a manifestation of understanding of our own space in time, and trying to find ways with methodology and methodically and structurally to make sense of that. I align with a tradition of a procession, which is in celebration of spiritual energies. When I mentioned for the first time in a public, semi-public space that my work was based in spirituality in a small gathering in Brooklyn, New York, 1994, I say some people rolled eyes, but I spoke the truth then and now. I dream my image. I see a lot of the work that I do in my dreams. I write then in the middle of the night. I wake sometime at 3 a.m. Ask Kamal, he's there. And then I drew and I write, and then I go to the studio and I argue with that first impulse, no? Because I know that I don't going to do, I argue with that first impulse. But that is the way, this is what I say with a lot of gratitude, as I say in the beginning, the work that I do doesn't belong to me, belonged to higher energies that dictated to me every single scene. And also the strength to make the work in sometimes impossible circumstances, which has been the case. Because, as you guys all know, it takes a village, several villages, and it takes a resilience and to be an absolutely crazy being to don't let yourself detour by the difficulties and the challenges and the many times that you hear no. And I know there is only 2 minutes left to me, but one of the most important part of my practice has been my teaching. I take pride of that. And I want to highlight, because that is something that I want to highlight the presence of Adam Shinsky here. I always say his name with a little mistake, but he forgave me for that. Because Adam, curating Documenta, this most and very important exhibition, put attention to bring many, many artists who were teachers, who were professors. Because I went to a point in my life in where people were questioning, why are you teaching so you want to do your art? And I was thinking, teaching is part of making my art. It's so important. And because I have extraordinary teachers, from Carmen Lidia Escobar, from Marina, grade 1st to 3, Carmen Lidia Escobar Menendez, 3 to 9, all the others, Antonio Vidal, who was Agustin Drake. So I take the idea of being able to share your doubting of what you know. Because when you are teaching, you need to doubt what you know. Because there are people there that know things that you don't know. They are the future. And they are coming with questions for what you don't have answered yet, and you need to build and go and learn the answers and give it to them. So I focus and I center. I am so grateful for this wonderful man who take the risk to go against the flow and say, wait a minute, all these brilliant people in the world that are teachers that we don't see in Documenta or elsewhere, and I don't want to. So I care about teaching, and I consider this a teaching moment.
We are learning, we are listening. It is epic, and there was many slides left, many questions that will be answered by Behold in the artworks. And I did want to end a little bit, just a couple minutes here. I wanted to shout out, Grace already got a shout out for curating this beautiful show at the Begonia Labs, a new space that you created with the Engine for Art, Justice, and Democracy here, or excuse me, I always do the wrong order, I'm sorry. EADJ as it's called, and the great team with that. And maybe you could just, you know, as a teacher, as a professor, as an artist, all, like you said, all of that is so intertwined, and you're planting and growing and cultivating all these seeds of other people. It's so collective, right? So I don't know if you, Magda or Katie, want to end on a moment of, you know, the impact you've had on Nashville, because Behold tells the story of your art, right? And we get to see it and luxuriate in it until January. Then it's going to go to the Getty in LA for its triumphant conclusion. And your work will continue to be everywhere. And we love you for that. But it's just so special to be here and celebrate Nashville.
I'd love to speak for a moment about Magda's impact. Truly, from the moment she arrived, she has just uplifted our community. There's so many artists and other people here that I think can speak to that. The people that she has brought to Nashville, if you know Magda, you know that she has friends across the world, many of whom are here today, from Darren Walker at the Ford Foundation. I mean, just so, Holland Cotter from the New York Times. I mean, just so many people she's brought to Nashville. And she's brought to the Frist specifically, or to Fisk University, another partner in EADJ, and of course to Vanderbilt. And then the way that she's also kind of exported us a little bit, when she curated her show in Matanzas in 2019, she brought, and she was very new to Nashville, she had just been here a year or so, she brought Nashville artists that she knew, Jamal Sheets, Brandon Donahue, Alicia Henry. She brought them and their work to Matanzas to be in dialogue with figures like Carrie Mae Weems and Julie Moretu. So so that impact, just literally, just physically bringing people and moving us around, the public art pieces that she has done through EADJ, not with her art, but during COVID, we did Carrie Mae Weems's Take 6 campaign. Helena Metaferia's banners are still on view on Fisk's campus as part of EADJ and the Tennessee Triennial. The Tennessee Triennial, that's a whole other contribution that she's done. So there's just been so much, and we are so much more culturally rich because of Magda, and I can only imagine what the next few years will bring. We are lucky to have her. My colleague Michael said the other day, Magda has given so much more to this city than she ever asked for in return, and I think that's says it just right.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, you want to say anything else, Trevor? Wrap it up. Yes, so with that, continue the applause, a giant round of applause for all Magda has given us and will continue to give us. Thank you so much, Magda. Woo!
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's go to see the show.